Welcome back to the Blog Boy Roundtable presented by the Bay Area Examiner. We have four blog boys here with us today. Myself, Seth Varnador, Robert Steig, and Nathan Bond, all of the Bay Area Examiner and of DraftKings Networks. We have, with a new title of Michigan Assistant Scouter, Nick Simon. We'll talk. Let's talk first about last week's game. Then we'll get into a little Michigan scouting here. Last week we were kind of divided on that Penn State Ohio State game. Speaking of the Big Ten, Ohio State covered. Nick and I both picked Penn State. Nick, I don't know if is James Franklin on Buster alert? Is he on Buster watch?
Unserious, just total unserious. I trusted James Franklin. I trusted Penn State. That's on me. That's my bad, guys. For anyone who took my advice, that's on me. I should have known better. They're just completely unserious. There's nothing else to say. Like, oh my God. And the defense played pretty well, but that's just typical Penn State, man. They're going to go – it's the same every year. They're going to go 10-2. They're going to lose to the two teams that matter. They'll go to the Cotton Bowl or whatever and win that. And so technically it'll be a success, but you can't beat the two teams that actually matter on your schedule. So, yeah, just a disappointment.
It'll be interesting to watch them going forward as maybe – some of those games end up rotating off their schedule. If they pick up some of the newbies that come in, maybe they can have a run. But yeah, it certainly seems like this was the year to get Ohio State, and they could not get them. The other game from last week, Tennessee, Alabama. Alabama comes roaring back to cover the 9-point spread. Poor Nathan Bond. We were in the press box. He thought he picked Alabama. And he was cheering for the Alabama comeback next to me as we sat in the Connecticut press box. Unfortunately, he had picked Tennessee. So that hurt.
Yeah. That was unfortunate. I was just so happy about – because it was, 20-7? And I was like, oh, man, my Alabama pick is just screwed. And then I'm looking through the notes as we're kind of sitting in the press box. I'm like – I turned to you, Seth. I'm like, oh, my God. I picked Tennessee. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I picked Tennessee. I've been rooting for – like, this was going on for like an hour and a half where I was like actively rooting in the press box.
We were all but high-fiving because I also picked Alabama. I actually picked Alabama +9. So.
Oh, my gosh. It was heartbreaking to come to that realization that I royally screwed that one up.
Yeah, but the reason you were checking is because North Texas was playing Tulane very tight, and you wanted to make sure that you didn't pick Tulane, and you picked North Texas +9.
That's also true.
An easy cover. Steig, you went off the board. Steig went 3-1 last week. He's now back tied for first. Steig, you went off the board. JMU -3.5. That was a big winner. And Nick, your off the board pick was Michigan -24.5. That's one came home pretty easily, and
that's why
I don't think they even needed to scout the signals for that one. So let's talk about it. That's kind of the big story in college football now, the Michigan scouting. It's turned into a lot more involved than what initially came out. Initially, I thought it was a sign stealing thing, and it was like, so what? But it's turned into quite an operation. Do any of you guys have anything to say about the Michigan? I do have some good sign stealing stories that I'll get to after here, but because it doesn't always work out even when you know the place. But what do we got? Anybody got something here, Nathan? I think you might have.
Yeah, talking to some folks who've played college football and in the pros, just kind of getting their take on it. One person basically said it's a witch hunt the NCAA is out for Jim Harbaugh for how he handled and acted during Burgergate, and it makes a lot of sense that the NCAA would do this. And the one thing that I've learned covering college football and college athletics for the last 7 years is if the NCAA gets on campus, they are looking at everything, and I mean everything. You want to know how women's basketball for USF got popped for some violations? It was because they were looking at Charlie Strong's USF football team. Once they get on campus, the scope of the investigation ceases to exist. So that is where you're going to get into some trouble. And this guy, he's been on one, I think would probably be the best way to put it. A 600-page manifesto based on Navy recruits. And he mentioned 400 plus Navy recruits and had like their essay, like their testing results. Bro, Rivals, and they do a fantastic job covering Navy recruiting, doesn't have a list of 400 Navy recruits. Like, what are we doing? Like, bruh. And on the flip side of that, Jim Harbaugh has not made any friends in his coaching profession. He has burned bridges left, right, and center. And speaking to a former college football player who, has some knowledge of the Big Ten sphere and college football and of that nature, it's never the guys around you currently that are going to get you hung. It's the guys who are no longer on the staff and have a bone to pick with you that will get you hung out to dry. For example, and not saying this person is in it, but this is an example of how much Jim Harbaugh has pissed people off in the past and why it seems like the chickens are coming home to roost. He forbid a coach from interviewing at a different institution. Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, he was interviewing for the Minnesota Vikings head coaching job. That's the kind of person Harbaugh is. And it's just coming back to bite him. Now, sign stealing, it is a thing that's happened forever. But much like the New England Patriots, the Houston Astros, the Boston Red Sox, you can't use technology to steal. Just do it the old-fashioned way. Be honorable about your sign stealing.
Yeah, I thought one of the most crazy things did it say that there was like what was the budget? $15,000 budget, I think it was.
$15,000 budget. This is from the Washington Post story, I believe.
How are they getting these tickets for 40 games for $15,000? Some of these are high price. I mean, some of these games are going to are high price affairs. They must have a guy.
I don't know, but I don't know why he was using his real name.
Yeah, there's a lot of. There's a lot.
That's the biggest question mark to me.
It just seems blatant. Michigan's terrible at cheating.
The teams,
not good at it.
Teams out west and teams up north just don't know how to cheat like the teams down south. Well, they haven't figured it out yet.
Multiple games for Ohio State games, multiple Georgia games. There's even one where they were trying to help a potential CFB playoff team against other future CFB playoff team, trying to help them out. What a mess. And gun to my head, I would almost bet Steve's life on it that Jim Harbaugh knew about quite literally everything.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Oregon cheating scandal that happened a few years ago where guys were writing checks. I mean, you have this one, the guy's using his real name to buy stuff. I mean,
incredible.
They need to come down south and get a real seminar on cheating. Steve, did this rock you to your core?
No, I mean the funny thing is, so I think the way it rocked you was how like stupid it was. It's not necessarily how like the paying with it in his own name, like that's just lazy. But like I see people coming out of the woodworks now to like it was on Twitter during the Ohio State game, the Ohio State offense like checked to the sideline, and then the camera on the Michigan sideline, and all of them like did something to like tip off the play, and everyone's like clear and blatant cheating, and someone like a couple hours later was like, yeah, that play resulted in a touchdown, by the way. Like Ohio State like threw like an 85-yard touchdown pass. Like sign stealing, super wrong. Don't do that. But also, you still have to like play the game. I think it's hilarious because a couple weeks ago at homecoming, I was with some friends who hadn't really gone to a USF football game in a long time. Obviously, don't know Golish's thing, so they see the three, Alvin and the Chipmunks on the sideline for USF, doing the signs and everything like that, but then holding up the black thing behind them. And they were like, why do they put up the black thing? And I told them, oh, it's because they don't want, the broadcast booth to, show the signals that are given to the quarterback, linemen, and wide receivers and everything like that. And my friend was like, well, like there's the people on the other side can still see it though, right? And I was like, oh yeah. And they're like, so there's like nothing against like them like just recording what they're doing on the opposite sideline for signals and then just like taking that and knowing what the signals are. And I was like, no, there like is literally no rules against it. And then this comes out like 2 weeks later. Just beautiful irony in my world at least. But yeah, stop getting your signs. If you want your signs to not be stolen, don't.
Nick, you're an assistant on the scouting team here, so you guys got caught. What is your reaction to the whole scheme falling down like a stack of pyramid of cards?
Red-handed. We got caught. You caught us, guys. Not really. Like this whole thing is just funny. Like the whole thing is just like this man Connor Stallions. Which, by the way, like that is
what a name.
What a name, Connor Stallions.
It's like an NXT wrestling name almost.
Yes, exactly. You're gonna see that man in the Orlando Performance Center in like a week because he won't be banned from the state of Michigan. This man had an entire manifesto like outlining how him and his buddies throughout college football are going to take over Michigan's football program within the next 15 years. Like 2039, you're going to see Michigan head coach Connor Stallions, and it's all going to start right here, him scouting across the country. Just hilarious. Just the entire thing is just hilarious. I don't really know or care for like what happens to Michigan as far as punishment goes, whatever. Just the whole thing's funny. It's hilarious.
Yeah. It's something. They really he seems like just a crazy person that is super single-minded focused, and they just pushed him in this direction and said, yeah, you do that, and he just went with it for sure. But to me, initially, I didn't think this was a big idea because sign stealing, signal stealing is super common. I remember a few stories from when I was coaching. We had one team that, signaled it in, and I was up in the box with our defensive coordinator, and it was the point I'd just tell him what the play was before it was coming in. He'd call the defense. And when I didn't get the signal or they signaled something new, he'd be turning to me and screaming, "What's the play?" I'm like, I don't know all of them, right? So he got so used to it. And then we won against that team. We played them twice. Signals stayed the same. They didn't change them. Then we played a team that was really good, and they didn't signal. They had number boards. So they'd hold up number boards. Everybody checked the wristband, and they made a big deal in the newspaper. They changed them every week so people couldn't steal them. Well, after 2 drives, you just write down what the play was when they show the number. And we missed like 50 tackles, and they scored 60 points on it. So it didn't really matter that we had the plays. But my favorite sign stealing story I've ever heard, and scouting story I've ever heard, is I coached with a guy whose dad coached. This was a college coach. His dad coached his dad was a high school coach for a long time, so he knew the game. They were playing somebody, and they weren't quite sure what that team was going to do, how they were going to play him. So the guy's dad was up in the area. He said, "I'll go watch their practice." And so he said, "Oh, okay." So his dad went over there, sat in the bleachers, watched practice. They were practicing in the stadium. A coach came up to him and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I played here in the 60s. I'm a really proud alum. I'm in town for a couple of days. I'd really love to watch practice." And the coach was like, "Oh, sure, go ahead." So he watched the whole practice, and then called his son right after, told him exactly what they were going to do. They ended up crushing the team later that week. So it happens. It's a little more common than you think, but not maybe this organized at a psychotic level as Michigan seems to have done. But
right. It's like there's a story. My best friend, he married a girl whose dad and brother basically coached like Pop Warner football. Like they were super into it. They were well off, so they had the headsets and they would go like, this is Pop Warner, like Luke's Chiefs, like Pop Warner of the Pop Warner. They would go record the opponent's games and practices, and they won multiple Super Bowls doing that. Like it was at that, like it's throughout history. This is just a thing that happens. Typically, you don't want your name on it, and typically you've got burner phones and cash on hand to buy said tickets, etc., etc.
yeah.
That's the tough beat, and obviously, the NCAA is definitely looking out for blood for Michigan. And the one thing that kind of solves all of this sign stealing sort of thing, mics in the helmets. It's cost prohibitive for a lot of schools. I think it would help out. I know I think some bowl games. You had that, or some.
I think the non-playoff bowls are allowing it this year.
So
you'll get a look.
That's a step in the right direction.
These were the same arguments that were made about instant replay once upon a time. It's too expensive,
right.
And then conferences started doing it in conference games, and then all of a sudden, you're seeing instant replay all over. So, you're seeing instant replay at some high school associations have instant replay. So, I think it'll probably end up following a similar path where it may be instituted in a conference level, and then people will adopt it. So, all right, that's kind of all the news we've got. Actually, when I first looked at this week, I thought it wasn't a great week in terms of games, and it may not end up being one, but there are a few pretty good games, and we've got 3 we're going to pick. We'll start with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, the Florida-Georgia game. Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite in Jacksonville. The total is at 47. Stieg, you're Jacksonville's native son. Where are you going in this game?
The prodigal son. Florida Georgia is always a special time in my heart. That I went to it one time in my entire life. It is a I can't curse. It is a crap show down there at Everbank during that time of year. So I try to stay away from it. I've got a funny story about that as well. But not funny is trying to cover Brock Bowers. That seems like it sucks, and it seems like no one has been able to figure out how to do it. And as much as I love Austin Armstrong from Florida, I'm not too positive they're going to have a matchup for him. So give me Georgia to cover here.
Now, Brock Bowers is probably out for this game.
Oh, he is? Oh, shows how much I paid attention.
I think probably.
I'm still
I believe he had surgery last week, or was it a week and a half ago? So he's probably not playing. Does that change your pick at all?
I'm still going to pick. No, because I think Georgia's still, for the time being, in death machine mode. So I don't waver in my pick.
Yeah, I'm picking Georgia as well. It just, we'll see what happens. But just Florida's 2 losses this year are kind of to similar-ish teams in terms of Georgia. If Florida can't run the ball, they have some problems. Georgia took it to them last year pretty good. I'll go with the dogs. Florida you kind of got to see it. Now, this is a high, spread with a low total. So that's kind of interesting, but yeah, I'm going to stick with Georgia as well. Nick, which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the dogs. Kind of similar to like what we were talking about with Red River last week. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's always a very interesting neutral site rivalry. However, in recent years, Georgia has mostly dominated this rivalry during the Kirby era. Like in the last 6 years, Florida's only win came during the 2020 COVID season. One thing about Florida's offense is that they move at one of the slowest paces. They only run about two. I wrote it down. They only run about 2 plays per minute. So if you're gonna go that slow, you better be consistently moving the chains, and buddy, that's gonna be that's gonna be really hard against this Georgia defense, especially a defense that the best third down defense in the country. Their opponents are only converting 23.6% of third down conversion attempts. So that's going to be tough for the Gators. So, yeah, I think Georgia just completely stonewalls them here. I also like the under hitting as well. I'm all over the Bulldogs here. It was an easy choice.
Yeah, Florida's a very strange team in terms of they have really good success rate, but then I think they pin a lot. They get penalties and get themselves in third and longs a ton, and they're terrible on third downs. So not great against this Georgia defense. Nathan, everybody else has Georgia right now. Which way are you going in this game?
Oh, I'm taking Georgia as well. Much like Penn State last week, like I got to see it against.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And I don't think Florida's not there yet. I think they can get there, but they ain't there yet. And it's I like Georgia even without Brock Bowers. Yeah, he may travel, but he's definitely not going to play.
Yeah, they're talking about him possibly traveling the game, but he shouldn't. He'll probably be out for a few weeks. Georgia has an interesting stretch coming up, but we'll talk about that maybe in future weeks. Next game, all our games are at 3:30. Interestingly, also they'll all be happening at the same time, so we'll all be really happy or be really sad by the time 7 o'clock rolls around. Next one is Oregon is a 6.5-point favorite going on the road to Utah. Utah obviously knocks off USC last week. The total is 48. Utah defense, we just talked about Florida. They've been pretty good all year, but I think when they play the better offenses, they're not quite athletic enough to match up. And I still don't think their offense is particularly great moving the ball against USC. Doesn't seem to be an issue for a lot of teams. So I actually like Oregon to go on the road and cover this. Nick, where are you on this one?
I think this is going to be a tight game. I have Utah covering as a home underdog here. Very interesting because this game is basically a Pac-12, like one of the first true Pac-12 elimination games between two teams that already have a loss. It's kind of a unstoppable force versus a movable object sort of situation here, because Oregon's offense, second highest scoring offense in the nation, averaging 47 points per game and 7.94 point yards per play. But then on the other hand, Utah, they have the second best third down defense in the country behind Georgia, tied for 10th in turnover margin. Again, that defense still really good. But I think the difference, what's going to make this game close, is that Utah, like Rice-Eccles Stadium, or Eccles, however you pronounce it. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the year. Very underrated venue in college football. It's very, very hard for opposing teams to go in there and win. Utah has an 18-game home winning streak at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So I think that's gonna play a huge factor in this, as the home crowd is getting loud and making Bo Nix's life misery. It's gonna be really hard for them. I think it's gonna be really hard for them to actually be able to go out and win this game outright. So I'm gonna take the Utes to cover. Close game. Oregon could still win, but I just think that it's gonna be really tight.
And Whittingham is a really good underdog coach as well. Nate, where are you heading on this one?
So I'm taking Oregon minus 6.5. You mentioned it, USC was still able to move the ball. And Oregon's, pretty athletic as well. And their defense has a pulse. So I think that could prove dangerous for Utah's offense. That they had a couple of bright spots. That final drive we watched, at that brewery in East Hartford, the only thing still open at 11:30 at night in East Hartford on a Saturday. So we watched the end of that game, and they looked pretty impressive on that final drive. But I don't believe that they could do that against a competent defense. And once again, I'm still asking, how does Alex Grinch still have a job?
Oh, I mean, who knows what's going on with Lincoln Riley? So I'm not sure. Steve, which way are you going in this one? You like the Utah home field advantage and that stellar defense, or are you riding with the Ducks?
I've been waffling on these next. I've been waffling on for like 15 minutes now. Just because I can't make a damn decision on either one of them, because like I love good strong defenses, especially at home. I love Oregon's offense, and I think Bo Nix is phenomenal. Quite a journeyman. What was it? 54 career starts in college football, set a record or something like that. Thanks COVID. I'm lean Oregon here, and I almost don't want to. I almost want to pick Utah at least to cover. I do think they win, but it might be like another game-winning field goal situation here. So I just, I'm gonna go with Oregon.
Yeah, my Utah is, like Nick said, one of the best environments. I think Bud Elliott said earlier this week, or maybe even been today, that he thinks it's like the best home field advantage in terms of like the gambling side, which is interesting because it's not huge, but it's a great advantage. Hoping, if you were picking Oregon, I think you're thinking maybe that seeing that environment in Seattle for the Washington game, maybe preps you for this, but it's hard to tell if you're ready or not until you're in it. So that should be a fun game. Another interesting game, especially kind of after what happened last week with Florida State kind of pulling out late against Duke and kind of putting it on them late. We have Duke plus 4.5 at Louisville. The total is at 46. I mean, the real question is, right, is Riley Leonard back at quarterback? There hasn't really been a ton of definitive statements on that. Nick, what do you think? Or do you think he's going to be back for this game? Do you think they pulled him out as kind of a precaution last week, or?
Like he basically, Mike Elko basically said that that they just didn't feel comfortable putting him back in the game. And again, similar to the last couple of weeks, it's just kind of his status is just going to be up in the air all the way to game time. Hold on, what did I write down here? So we probably won't know his status until like right before the game. Injury concerns on both sides, because you have Riley Leonard on Duke's side where we don't know his status. And then for Louisville, coming off their bye week, they lost one of their starting offensive linemen for the season with a knee injury. And then their top rusher, Jahar Jordan, he's also dealing with a hamstring injury, so he'll be questionable. So as far as this game goes, kind of similar to Oregon, Utah, this is kind of a de facto ACC elimination game because both of these teams are tied for second place in the ACC standing. So that's going to be a big deal. It's kind of hard to make heads or tails of who's going to win this game, considering that both of these teams are literally right next to each other in SP Plus in the top 30. I'm going to give the edge to Louisville here. I'm going to go with them to cover as a home favorite. I just think that them coming off, they've had a week. They're coming off a bye week. They're at home. I think Brom is going to have his guys right, especially coming off that loss to Pitt a couple of weeks ago. And again, even if Riley Leonard comes back, he's not going to be 100%. And you go with and it's clear that their backup is not really, their freshman backup's not quite ready just yet to take the reins. So I have Louisville covering in this one.
Yeah, I've kind of the same, especially with the Leonard. If he's out, if they declared him out, what would this line be? Would it climb to a touchdown? I don't know. I don't know how many points he's worth, but you saw the offense kind of stall out as soon as he left the game against Florida State, and he wasn't exactly lighting it up either. So I'm on Louisville as well, being at home, off a bye. It's just tough for Duke to kind of the injury situation bit them at the wrong time. Nathan, where are you on this one?
Oh, yeah, I'm taking Louisville minus 4.5. I think Riley Leonard is Duke's offense, and I don't trust him even if he does come back. He is severely compromised because it's the same ankle he hurt against Notre Dame, and that's just a lot of pressure for a guy whose entire utility, I guess, is his feet and being able to move around. And he did not look great on Saturday, so I can't imagine the same injury, him looking better. So yeah, I'm taking Louisville -4.5, regardless if he plays or not.
Stieg, where are you on this one?
So I decided to start writing down my picks before the show so that I can keep track of them, and so I don't come in as blind and annoy Seth if I'm doing well or not. So for this one, I put 5 question marks and then Riley Leonard on it. And so prize guest picker, hey Paige, who do you like between Duke and Louisville this week? She said Duke.
Oh.
So add a guest pick of the week because I'm not going to decide this one. It's too much up in the air things. I think this Louisville team is quite fraudulent at times. I think this Duke team is quite fraudulent at times. I don't like either of them. I also have a personal vendetta against both of those schools. So Giant Meteor.
the old Giant Meteor game. You gotta love it. All right, now we'll go off the board here. Steve, are you ready to just go right back around off the board?
Oh, I'm always ready to go right back around. I always try to find a weird sticking out score. This one, off first glance, Air Force favored by 13 against Colorado State. Air Force getting a lot of love in the polls, getting a lot of love nationally. Turning kind of into the Group of 5 darling. Maybe we see them crash into your 6 bowl. I think they're a bunch of Buster Browns over there at the Air Force Academy. Fake school, not a real thing. They're not planes either. Obviously, they coming off a pretty good rivalry win over Navy. I watched the game. Boy, howdy, that game was boring. I always forget how boring the Surface Academy games are. Man, I think I turned on the game. It was fourth quarter. It was like 13-0 with like 4 minutes left. And then all of a sudden Ty Lavatai had to throw, 13 more times. And I was like, good God, this is terrible. Colorado State has looked a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. And obviously this is a big rivalry game as well within the state of Colorado. So I actually like Colorado State to cover that 13-point spread. Don't know if they'll pull out a win here, but they looked good last time they had a rivalry.
That they didn't. They covered a big, I think that was a 20-point spread, right? So Colorado State +13. All right. Nathan, where are you going this week? You got back on it with your off the board pick last week. North Texas +19.5. They almost won that thing outright. Where are you going this week?
Florida State -20.5 at Wake Forest. Florida State's still really good. This is a very fun offense. Wake Forest does not have an offense, and I think that win at Pitt was fraudulent, and Pitt sucks anyway. And they're just terrible, and this is going to be the best offense that Wake Forest has. And I have a personal vendetta against the linebackers coach of Wake Forest, and I hope Florida State puts 60 on him.
All right. Nick, where are you heading off the board this week? You've gone Michigan the last 2 weeks. I think you had some advanced knowledge there. Where are you going this week?
I'm going to SEC country, baby. I'm going Mississippi State, Auburn under 41.5 because boy, howdy, these two offenses are butt cheeks, man. Last week, Will Rogers didn't play for Mississippi State. He was dealing with a shoulder injury, and they beat Arkansas 7-3.
A classic.
His status is still up in the air. I think next year we will be seeing Mr. Rogers at some Texas school that runs the air raid principles, because I don't understand why Mississippi State just almost immediately pulled the ripcord from the old air raid system. RIP Mike Leach. And Auburn's offense is just pathetic, just absolutely pathetic. Like, yeah, man, it sucks that last year you weren't able to get Grayson McCall, like land the plane with Grayson McCall. I guess there was like a issue with transfer credits or whatever, and that's why he's still at Coastal Carolina, whatever. But come on, man, you can do better than Payne Thorne and Robbie Ashford. It's just embarrassing. So, yeah, man, this is going to be a really disgusting game. So give me the under for this one. It's just going to be absolutely horrible.
Yeah, that's should not be a fun game. You've got some bad offense there, and yeah, if Rodgers doesn't play, it could get ugly. All right, so I really struggled going off the board this week. I had like 3 or 4 I was looking at. Changed my mind on them a few times. I'm actually going to go. Tulane is playing at Rice. Rice is a 10.5-point underdog. I'm actually going to take the over 53.5. Tulane has not been great at stopping the pass. Rice is pretty good at it, and we saw Rice's defense live and in person. They are not very good. So I'm going to go Tulane Rice over 53.5. So we're all on Georgia. Nick is on Utah. Everybody else is on Oregon. Everybody's on Louisville except for Stieg and the guest picker. I've got Tulane Rice over 53.5. Nate's got FSU minus 20.5. Nick has a disgusting Mississippi State Auburn under 41.5. And Steve gets Colorado State plus 13. We'll be back next week to review these picks and preview the next week in college football. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Help us game the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week.
Bye.